we will meet some absolutely fascinating artists that you can already see, or at least I can see them, and you will see them shortly. And we'll find out how they combine new technologies like artificial intelligence, IoT sensors, and of course, virtual reality, also for their artworks to create brand new immersive experiences. Silke and the team have put this program together. Thank you for that. I think it's great. And just to give you some overview of what we are up to, first, the speakers will each give us an insight into their work for about 10 minutes, and then they'll briefly answer some questions specifically on their project. After that, we'll open up the discussion for everyone, like all the speakers and also your comments, to discuss some topics together. In total, we have 90 minutes, and I'm pretty sure they will just fly away. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers. Well, the first one I wanted to introduce just left the video, so I'll start with the other ones. I'll start with Mathis Nitschke. He's joining us from Munich, and he's an artist, a film and theater composer, and he's the founder of Sofilab. And he will share how he and his team curated Lure, and that's a musical theatrical exploration of AI that just happened during the lockdown. Hi, Mathis.
So hello, yeah, thanks for invitation. Hi Wolfgang, hi Silke, Kerem, Mehmet, Hannah.
Great, and then Hannah is back on her place. Please welcome Hannah Payala Asefa. She's a contemporary dance artist who works in various disciplines as a choreographer, as a dancer, as a researcher, and also as a pedagogue. And she's based in Finland and joining us from Helsinki. She will talk about her work, Skeleton Conductor XR. Hi, Hannah.
Hello, you all. Nice to be here.
And
great company.
Great to have you. And live from Turkey, from two different places in Turkey, we have Mehmet Ünal and Kerem Demirayak joining us. They are all both working from the Istanbul studio, Mehmet Ünal Studio. That's a new age audio and music company creating audiovisual works and performances using crazy tech like XR, IoT, and machine learning. And they will show us their IBM cloud instrument, which is pretty fascinating. Hi, Mehmet and Kerem. Great to have you here.
Hello,
Hi.
everyone. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy being here. Yeah.
Great. They will present first, Mehmet and Kerem. But before they do this, I have a question to all of you artists out there. When was the first time that you came across a new technology and you thought, I just gotta use this for my art? And why did you have this feeling about it? Whoever wants to start, just jump in. If not, I just pick Mathis.
that really reveals my age now. Because I mean,
okay,
it really was the computer, like working with digital audio in the beginning of the 90s. I mean, that I grew up, I mean, we had my father is an engineer, so he had computers, but working with audio inside a computer was not something I saw before I became 17 or 18 or 20 even or so. So that really was a miracle to be able to slice and cut and do things.
Great. So some tech from the early 90s. Hannah, what about you? When was the first time that you came across a new technology and just wanted to use it for your art?
Well, it's kind of a trick question because it's okay. Let's define new technology. What is new? I think kind of all different technologies that I've used were somehow new to me as an artist. Like when I started working with film, for example, already in the late kind of early 20. Yeah, for the past 10 years, I've been kind of working with interactive technology. And I really started with live performance and with kind of sensor technology, more or less, which was kind of magical for me because you were able to already create some sort of interactivity with wireless connection to the computer, which was important for me. to be able to move freely.
Great. Yeah, we'll talk about the interactive art that you do in more detail later. Mehmet, you come from classical music, so when was your first tech moment?
When I saw a software for signal processing and sound synthesis, actually I was very excited about that, because I realized that I could produce unique sounds for using that kind of softwares and computers, And the most important thing for me in that time, actually, I realized that, traditional composers using sound for composing music, and I realized that I can compose the sound themselves using synthesis techniques, and that was the miracle thing for me in that time.
So what was your first software?
Actually, Max MSP.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kerem, I don't want to judge the others, but I guess you're the youngest on the panel. So what was your first technology that you wanted to work with?
So I came from a music production, so I'm a musician myself. And I was more fascinated with performance technology. I remember playing around with, those crazy sensors that you can make any fruit or any object an instrument. I remember playing around with these, just a simple concept, but like that kind of blew my mind. You can turn anything to an instrument after that point. Yeah.
Great. So I think we are warmed up now. And now, Mehmet and Kerem, the stage is yours to tell us more about your project, the Cloud Instrument.
Okay.
So hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me well, and I hope we won't get any latency issues in our presentation. We are Mehmet Ünal Studio. We consider ourselves as a new age media art and music technology and creative audio studio. Okay, yeah. So as you met Mehmet, he's our founder and creative director of the project. So our studio has collaborated with many studios around the world, visual studios, but also artistically directed many projects that were exhibited in many cities around the world, like Washington, Melbourne, Istanbul, New Mexico, and so forth. We take pride in some honors like German Design Award and Red Dot Design Award. Just quickly going over our selected works, we have done many on-site and traditional media works, such as AVA installation in Ars Electronica. We have worked with YouTube and Google in mostly their public events and the opening shows for them, with concepts such as using their sound analysis technology for Google and an audiovisual performance for YouTube. We have exhibited immersive projections in Paris in Atelier de Lumière, and have done crazy stuff like real-time face tracking and also generative audio with clients such as Vodafone and so forth. One of our passions is also to bring this new media aesthetic and the technologies that we kind of had to play with in live performances. These are completely musical and artistic performances that use this new media visual aesthetic and also the sound aesthetic for the pleasure of the audience. We have done 4 so far. These are not really jam sessions. They're mostly 3 to 4 minutes, really intense, highly prepared, audiovisual shows. And after the pandemic, we unfortunately had to end our on-site performances, but we're looking forward to extend this in, extended reality very soon. Also, there are some interactive instruments that we have built, such as Touch, which is a curtain instrument that you can push with your hands and kind of play around with it. We have collaborated with Nike, turning their Air Max into a playable gyroscope sensor-based instrument. where audiences could go to a store and lift the shoe and with an artwork in front of them, just play around with that instrument. Also, we have the IBM Cloud instrument, which we're gonna explain right now. Also, Mehmet has programmed some softwares, which is based on Max MSP that are available to the public. There are crazy stuff like webcam theremin, Real Stutter, which is a sound processing tool for musicians. And we use these softwares for our own studio aesthetic, sound aesthetic, and also share that with the public for them to play around with too. Okay, so IBM Cloud Instrument is basically an installation that IBM wanted us to build in their Think event in 2020, based in Istanbul. We had an initial prototype of a sensory leap motion based instrument that any user without any musical background could play with their hands. However, we wanted to expand that further and implement that into IBM Cloud's infrastructure. To give you a basic overview, maybe we can play the video and watch the teaser. Here we go. There you go. Again, the initial prototype involved just using the leap motion and training different XYZ positions in space with a machine learning algorithm that we have built so that different octaves and different pitch ranges could be understood from the leap motion. And it's not just random noises being generated, but an actual instrument that you can play. However, IBM really wanted us to integrate their technology, and because their cloud system is not something that audiences could really experience, we tried to show what it's capable of through really immersive sound and visuals. To dive deeper into what we have done actually in the clouds, maybe we can move to the next slide. Mehmet. Can you move on to the next one? So IBM has a product called Watson IoT. It is basically a really world-class system that companies use to build IoT products. So we implemented a system where the messages from the leap motion doesn't connect to the multimedia software through cabling or any actual hardware, but all through their cloud processing, which gave us a result of absolutely like up to 0 to none latency. This way we could create a system where the data flow goes into Notch or Touch Designer, a visual program, also into the synthesizer in real time. And it could also be played with through a web browser because the IoT systems just work as a subscriber and broker system. Just like you would subscribe to a YouTube channel, you can subscribe to an information flow. And we have done that through Node-RED framework, which is also found by IBM, and built that whole system so that real-time audience and also the web-based participants could interact with this instrument in that event. I'm not sure how much time we have, so I'm gonna move on quickly. What does that have to do with XR, you might ask? So after just realizing this in our first project, the pandemic started and we started to research what we can do later. The current IoT concepts with the introduction of 5G can allow multiple musicians from across the world to in real time perform together with no latency. And this performance can be shown to an on-site audience on top of a remote audience that can be connected through VR or any XR technology of your choosing. And by building this whole system into the IoT, we can basically in the near future see virtual bands that could be from anywhere, from one player from Istanbul, the other from Korea, the other from Mexico. They can form a band without even meeting each other. And the art can actually happen in the internet. So back in the day, obviously, the first stage was to create computer-generated art. However, right now, the web-based browser technologies and introduction of technologies like NVIDIA's Omniverse, for example, it's slowly moving towards a cloud-based and completely, a cloud-based playground for artists to generate art in the internet. Okay, so with the time left, if you can quickly scan this QR code, and we will basically manipulate and play Mehmet's synthesizer in Istanbul from your web browser applications. I hope this works. You will see a play note button with some cutoff resonance filters. And we will hopefully see data being, yeah. I guess that worked. Yes. So what just happened is that every single trigger in your web app, as you can see, gets in real time connected to this IoT platform where we can see all the subscribers. And this messaging system is not like MIDI or OSC that you might be familiar with. It is MQTT, which is the information protocol for IoT systems. You can check our whole blog where we explain how we've created this patch and how it kind of was built together on our website, mehmetünal.com/IBM Cloud Instruments. So if you're out there trying to find out about these technologies too, please get in touch with us.
Great. I think that people are so enjoying to use the synthesizer.
Okay, Mehmet, you can go into mute.
Okay. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for this presentation and this live event. Okay. Yeah, I gotta mute you. Okay, no, that's it. Thank you so much, Kerem and Mehmet, for this presentation. Maybe just a quick follow-up question from my side. So the IBM Cloud instrument that you showed us in the video, I think, if I got it right, that was an on-site instrument where people could interact with their movements, and depending on the movement, the sound and the visual installation changed. So maybe you could explain how this
Mhm.
is how this technology is connected to the example that you just showed us, which is also an IoT technology. Because if I got it right, that's kind of the same project, but just two different outcomes of it, right?
Mhm. Yes. So to answer your question, our actual project with IBM involved two parts, two chapters. Unfortunately, the second chapter couldn't be done because of the pandemic. So first, we've installed this instrument on site. And you're right, the instrument was played by hand gestures and just experience in person to person. However, during a talk, we also gave a link to the remote audience, the online participants. And basically they could also manipulate certain parameters with their web apps. So it was kind of intertwined, but it was just basically a prototype. The second part was going to be a live performance that we're going to do on stage, where the audience, both digital and on site, was going to affect the visuals and the music parameters as they were watching. Maybe they were going to decide where this performance was going to move into. Maybe it's going to go double time or half time. It's like a real-time voting system, or you can just basically build anything you want with that. But we couldn't implement that yet. And right now we are researching, but we need partners and collaborators to build that in the XR. So if you're interested, please, we'd love to talk.
That sounds good. We got one question from the audience to you. Have there been any educational projects realized with these IoT projects?
So it is quite a new concept, and there are some research educational papers out there. One in Queen Mary University in London. They have actually also came up with the academic title of Internet of Musical Things. Right now, we aren't doing any educational projects yet, but we're doing slowly some workshops. And after understanding the technology better, I think our studio will focus on this much deeper.
Great. Thank you both. And now we move from IoT to artificial intelligence, because that's the tech that Mathis dealt a lot with during the pandemic. So Mathis, maybe you can show us how AI can be used to create an interactive artwork that works during a lockdown.
Yes, thank you. I would still like to give a bit of an overview what I and we are doing. So interestingly enough, I have a similar background. So I come also from classical music. I'm a composer actually, and I have extensive theater and music theater background. So next to composing music for theater and film, I actually composed a few operas, like the big thing. And that's kind of the heart of everything I do, also in terms of machine learning. And a few years ago, I founded this company or studio, Sofilab, which is all about experimenting about around the questions: what are the new forms of listening enjoyment and the immersive and interactive environment we live in today? So a few of these projects, it's pretty much started with I do a lot of stuff with smartphones, because this is like the ubiquitous thing we all now carry around and the most revolutionary device we have. And just by using the smartphone with all its sensors and headphones, you can create completely new musical and sonic experiences. So we did a few interactive sound walks. We do kind of standard stuff. So we do sound and sound programming for games, for VR games. This is a very interesting one inside MPhil, and we are currently working on a larger version. This one is more of a proof of concept. So basically, what this experience allows is that you enter the sonic space of the orchestra. So you use your smartphone and the headphones and binaural 3D sound to walk through the orchestra and through the sound of the orchestra. So this idea of using the orchestra as a sound sculpture or a sound installation becomes a whole new meaning. And so that's really the basic foundation. It all comes from music, and that's why we also work with the best partners we can find. So these apps I create together with the Munich Philharmonic Orchestra, and with ECM Records. We did an installation in Seoul 2 years ago on their 50-year anniversary. So that's kind of the thing, and one of the major things happening was a music theater piece in 2017 called Maya, which is known as the first augmented reality opera ever. So it took place in the last industrial ruins in Munich, and basically what we did there was that we used, so you see that the hall is really full of graffiti. So there's this layer, this added layer of hidden meaning, and you use your smartphones to, you scan the graffiti. So the graffiti are signs from a different culture and from a different time, and you scan them to unlock story secrets or to unlock hints how it works. And later you can actually look inside these huge ovens. So these 3 ovens were basically the main protagonists of this piece. All these pieces, like beginning from this very sound walk in 2015, all these pieces are around the question of man-machine interaction. So it's all about our relation to the machines and how they shape our life in modern society. So that's always the basic theme, and that's a very natural development into working with machine learning. So what actually is this so-called artificial intelligence in relation to our organic, in relation to our natural intelligence? By the way, we try to avoid the term artificial intelligence, which we regard more as a publicity term, but it works as publicity. So, and this project is originally conceived as a large music theatrical work, and which partly didn't get funded completely, but we had some research funding, and then the pandemic hit too, and we just developed the whole thing. Not the whole thing, but we started developing, and we presented in last November some kind of open studio thing. The idea of Lur, or later the music theatrical piece, is Parsifal. So it's all centered around this medieval epos of Parsifal. That's the knight who grew up in the forest. So his mother protected him from society. And he grew up in the forest. He was able to talk with birds. And then suddenly there are these 3 knights appearing, and he sees these knights and says, "Wow, who are you? This is crazy. I want to be like you. Where are you coming from? How can I be like you?" And then the whole, like this book, Possible book, is about learning. Learning, in the end, it's about learning empathy. And through this journey, he actually becomes a knight and finds the Holy Grail. And in our music theatrical piece, Parsifal is a machine. So a machine which grows up in the lab with computer scientists taking care of him, and then suddenly the audience enters the lab, and the machine gets super curious, and wants to be like us humans and asks us, so who are you and where are you coming from and where does it look like where you're coming from? And all these questions which we have difficulties to answer. So so just give you some, and this is this LER is a prototype for several possibilities of learning from each other, and the whole what we prototyped was to show how the machine learns from us and how we influence a learning machine. I said the whole thing is framed with the story, and we really went back into the very origins of storytelling, which is, of course, the storytelling in the evening, the night around the fire. Due to the pandemic, we staged a Zoom meeting, so it's we connect through the Zoom around the fire. Now the story is told, and this is distorted. Now, when does she start? I jump to make it up.
They're singing on the ground.
So this text.
It is the beginning of the end. There is a mysterious life here.
The text which is narrated here, I created together with the GPT-2 language model, which I trained on a corpus of romantic English literature like Frankenstein and this kind of stuff, and prompted it with phrases from Parsifal. So we get this distorted Parsifal narrative, and I edited then so of course the Parsifal myth, the old medieval myth, is told again and again. So it's already in the Parsifal epos as is the method of retelling a story. So basically GPT-2, this language model, is retelling Parsifal, and they go back and forth between already a retelling by other authors. So I mix a lot of different ways to tell the story of Parsifal. Just have a listen.
Parsifal wants to know things that have never been told before. He wants to know how, why, and how to go back to the days when men went to sleep at night and women played with fire. He wants to know the secret of love and to know the secret of life. He wants to know everything that happens in life.
So,
a frog lies.
In a way, I really like the kind of absurdist thing GPT-2 does. So if anybody has experience with GPT-3, the successor, for me that feels almost a bit too normal. So, so the next scene is the meeting with the first night, and here this is a prototype for an interface between improvising machine and improvising singer. So the orange, maybe I should actually share a larger version of that, right? But I'm not sure if you still see that if I enlarge that. Is that now in full screen, or do you see it? Yes?
Screen,
okay,
yeah.
Perfect. So this is actually this is also a model, kind of a model, trained on bird songs. So here Parsifal is communicating with the machine like on bird. I have to stop because there's a lot of stuff more, and I tend to talk and talk and talk because there's so much material in it. So this is a scene where we actually can see through this interface how the machine learns from the singer and how the singer returns from the input from the machine. This is so far a user interface prototype, so there's not really intelligence behind it, but it will be in the next incarnation. Then we have another
Your hands, or you hurt yourself. You
another
have lived in the
chapter
forest
of
long
story
enough. You've seen good and evil, right and
with
wrong.
music
Now
composed
you can go
by
back.
AI.
Come, follow me.
So it learned already a bit to play. So this is actually the heart in terms of machine learning development of LER. He collaborated with the basic machine learning research lab by Volkswagen. So Patrick van der Smacht and his team, they working on I'm a bit tired after this day, and I don't have these terms handy with me. VAE models are, anybody can help me if they can. So basically, we have a machine. So this is a real machine playing a drum battle with a live drummer. The drummer was here in my studio and played with the machine over internet. And they threw back and forth like 2 bars of drums. So the drummer was playing 2 beats, 2 bars. I'm sorry. This is the latent space, the training, the latent space of the model on the training. I know this sounds a bit confused, and it is a bit confused. It tried to simplify it a lot. So the model recognizes a similarity in its latent space. This is a compression of a big data set of drum playing, and it tries to be close. Well, we have a parameter where we can set if it should play something similar to the drummer or something which is more distant to or more opposed to the drummer playing. But basically it listens to what the drummer is playing and matches that to the nearest point in the latent space, and then looks for the nearest neighbor in the latent space and answers that as a computer. And the funny thing is that of course a human drummer is having fun teasing the machine. So there's a lot of 4/4 rock style training data in the model, and the drummer loves to play like odd rhythms, like strange meters, like 9 against 8 or something. And so the machine tries to respond, but it's not able to answer with the same complexity. And so on. Then
For a moment,
moment
I
of
thought
storytelling.
that you were...
And then we build a chatbot, which is, I didn't test it before, but it actually should still be working, like lure.bsqd.me, where you can actually chat with the language model I used to produce the distorted parsable text. And in this chat, there's the most important question is then the question what does it look like where you come from, and then you you give her an answer like rainy gray roofs, and then the chatbot will search for images of, use that as a search query to search for images, and uses those images as training data for a corpus to learn how it looks like outside. And then later it says, okay, thank you, I learned enough, I want to go into the world. So here you see, no, I jumped too far. So this is an illustration of the collection of this data. So it collects it collects this image database in real time, where it's supposed to be. So again, this is a prototype.
I don't need to know
training
anymore.
in real time is
You may be
kind
so
of
sensible
numbing.
that you won't.
And then it leaves
The nose
space and
there,
enters the world
that would
and
do.
sees
That's far worse
everything
than a scope. I shan't laugh. I'll tell you something. I don't
through
like
the eyes
that.
of this
I
training.
don't like
through,
you like
through
that.
the eyes of our
Then
answers.
don't stay there unless you don't want to talk to
You
me.
might know the artist Mehmet Akten. Memo Akten actually is his name. And he has this beautiful piece, Learning to See, or forgot the exact title, but this is heavily inspired from that. So I think I went again much over time.
That's right. That's right. That's thank you. It was fascinating.
I'm very sorry. This is it's the same story ever.
No problem. It was fascinating anyway. But so you don't get your follow-up questions, but I think you answered most of them anyway. So thank you so much for this insight into how you used AI to create this completely new form of art. And we'll talk about AI afterwards in our discussion. But now, let's have a look at the last project that we want to see more in depth, and that's from Hannah. And yeah, before we lose more time, but yes, it was not lost, it was great. Thank you, Mathis. I'll hand over to Hannah.
Great. Do you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. Good. So I will try to be brief or go through these slides quickly, but let's hope I'm not too dragging along too much. But yes, I will talk a little bit about my artist work in the digital environments. Just a short background of me. So I am a choreographer with 25 and plus year career. And lately, for the past, let's say, 10-ish or a little more years, I've been working with the mediated body in some sort of digital performances and also in virtual reality, and incorporating different kinds of technology into the performance practice in quite diverse ways. And I've created quite many live performances with technology, also produced a VR film called Devil's Lungs with the director Alla Kovgan, with some contemporary Finnish folk music and folk dance. And then also lately worked more with VR. Oops. So I just go briefly into why I use technology. Because for me as a choreographer, the body and the movement and the real tangible flesh is really the core and the interesting thing. And I was very technology opposed for a long time. But then I've been very interested to looking for ways to augment to kinesthetic thinking that happens when you're dancing and moving, and to kind of extend and make this introspective how moving feels inside to be heard and visible. I'm kind of positioning my work into a larger theoretical discourse of embodied experience. And I'm trying to think of how we encounter the technological environments through the body. And in practice, this incorporates this idea or this soma aesthetic design of how to design for the enactive perception, and how through the activity we perceive and understand the world around us. This is more connected to the cognitive theory. So I'm really thinking of how I choreograph these environments, what actions or ways of being inside the environment the technology suggests, and how to design the interactive environment, which then induces or kind of organizes the participants' actions. And again, the participant can be a trained performer or also just the user. So for me, these kind of new mediated spaces are the new stages, the new performative stages that involve constructing and staging the perception and presence, the human perception and presence. And I'm in digital performance, I'm really looking at the somatic dimensions and the forms of performativity when the body is touched by, interacts with, and incorporates the effects of technology. And for me, I feel that this new performative body and corporeality emerges, where the body is not only affected by, but entangled with this digital phenomena. And this entanglement of phenomena is described as interaction by theorist Karan Barad. Yes, going forward. So I started with this sounding motion method, which is a sonified body practice, where I've created multiple performances with the sounding motion practice or method, but also held workshops and training for professional dancers, musicians, and media students. So in this practice, we used body-placed sensors to track the movement and to sonify mostly improvised dance. This was creating this kind of audible feedback for movers and dancers to hear their movement, and then also to communicate through the sound, communicate with themselves or within themselves, but also with the other performers, but also to the audience. And the practice was also sensitizing the awareness, different kinds of awarenesses of the body, but also the space. And I felt that, or we found out that it's kind of extending the body into the space through the sound. And that I found really interesting. And this kind of extending the body into the space became more like a power statement or power status that that we were kind of, I was thinking of who is occupying the space through sound and creating sound, who has the power or the ability to create sound. So I found it really interesting that it was kind of changing these or creating these alternative power strategies in this performance space. So then from the sounding motion practice, I wanted to explore the possibilities of creating an artwork for non-professional users, because this sounding motion practice was actually really demanding quite a lot of practice, especially because it was improvised and it really needed the persons to get acquainted with the technology and with the setting of the technology. And I was hoping to provide access to this thinking through the body for a larger audience or kind of non-trained audience. And that's why I started exploring the virtual tools to create a more inclusive artwork. And so in the skeleton conductor design process, I had some kind of goals or principles, and one of them was the primacy of the kinesthetic experience, so that it would be movement-based. So it's movement-triggered sound and visuals, which is, again, of course, very deeply connected to experiencing art and meaning-making and aesthetics. Then I also wanted to make it very open-ended, kind of improvisatory, so that the activities are not organized around a story or a task that one needs to fulfill, that there is no fixed way of experiencing the work, but it's rather enabling multiple flexible ways to encounter the work. And I also wanted to be this kind of polysolutional, that there is never only one way or best way to go about to accomplish this exploring task, but every approach would be correct or right. And this led to this inclusivity, that there is really no sort of skill requirements, but it's suitable for all kinds of bodies and all kinds of personalities in different ages and so forth. Fun and pleasure was also really important to me, that I wanted to sort of to create this space that it's pleasurable and fun and sort of safe to be in, also that it induces this want and need to explore more, and also just test out your different physicalities. I also wanted to emphasize sound, and therefore we sort of kept the visuals quite minimum or simple and abstract. We used FMOD to create the spatial sound field together with my sound designer Janne Storm, and it was a really interesting process of creating the work, because it was really about kind of testing and trying out and looking for different kind of like different sonic metaphors that would translate into a code. And also we created multiple layers of interactive sound, and most of the sounds are not really connected to the visuals. And this we did because we really wanted to, or I was really interested in emphasizing the connection between the movement and the sound, and the visuals are merely kind of helping the person to explore the world and keep their balance and feel safe. And FMOD we decided because it's a quite flexible tool. It allows to map sound and different filters into like huge variety of different parameters of movement, or it can be spatial, or it can be dynamics, or so there's many different sort of orientations how you can approach of what you are mapping. And I would say that merely only the passing of time is something that it's not in your control, because that's just happening in the life. And that's the only thing that we can't really control. Of course, the feeling of time passing is different, and it changes depending on how you use the work or how you act within the work. I will show the short video, so you will get an idea of the aesthetics of the piece. This is a mix of the first-person view and the third-person view of the work. And in this video, we've placed a filmed person inside, but there is actually no avatar or body representation inside the work. And this is to allow to pay attention to the proprioception and sound. So there is this subtle dramaturgy in the piece that it's sort of suggesting different dynamics and different ways of exploring the work. But it's very improvisatory in that sense. There's merely basically sort of two different kinds of scenes and different kinds of visuals. So just a little bit about the experience then. So as this kind of virtual environment simulates somehow the world's physics, but yet it differs from it, that it allows you to, for example, create and sort of play this environment or create this sonic world. For me, what it's interesting and important in it is that it gives this kind of an opportunity to visit the time when we were new to the world, when we only were learning the laws of the world and the principles through bodily exploration and play. This kind of learning by doing concept. And as bodily actions produce and shape the visuals and musical dimensions, the experiencer both produces and interprets their own story or their own sort of travel through this space or through the experience. And it becomes articulated for the experiencer in the lived moment. And for me, I think one of the important things was also this kind of ethical viewpoint, that while the work is really playful and beautiful, and sometimes it grants, and something that grants this kind of creative freedom, I would say that the core statement is about being in a world as a responsible actor, and that the importance of being seen and heard is sort of really sort of grounded into our humanity, that we need to, we want to be seen, and in this world, the sort of digital entity is seeing and hearing us and responding to our actions. And this idea that you need to change your behavior if you want to change the response that the artwork gives you. So it's not kind of a, it's not set in stone, but it's something that it's continuously changing, and you are sort of able to change your own experience, and therefore you become one of you become the artist. There's a little bit a short clip from some audience experiences. I will show this. A few minutes of this. So as you see, it sort of facilitates many different approaches. You can be really subtle and sensitive, or active and have really kind of like larger actions. And it's apparent that also, you know, depending on personality, some people focus more on the visuals and some are more focusing on the sound. And yeah, I mean, the response have been really positive on the work. And I would say that the imminent responses have been merely joy from this kind of strong agency, but also this like really, really strong immersiveness. Also for some people, of course, the novelty of the device and the sort of art experience in VR. And also this kind of sensibility in this multimodal awareness that it changes between people. And what is interesting to me is that it seems to sort of create this weird dual effect, this kind of like on a neural level or on your kind of activity level, that it's sort of giving you this groundedness or even relaxation, that it's sort of calming down your nervous system, but then at the same time it's really kind of, there's this excitement and arousal and this kind of neural activation, and that these different sort of brain waves are activated simultaneously. And therefore I've started sort of describing it more. It's kind of like active mindfulness, that it's a weird feeling that people get, that you are sort of getting after the experience, because you're physically so active, but somehow because of the concentration you become really grounded and really sort of calmed and concentrated. And I found that super, super interesting, and that's something that it's going to be a topic of my research when I'm researching this this experience, and then going along and creating some new artworks, hopefully in the future. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Hannah. You also took some more time, but anyway, it was still interesting. So I would say that we open up the discussion right away to all of you. But the first question goes to you, Hannah, because it connects to what you were talking about and what you were creating. Because you were not creating a linear experience; it's an interactive experience, and the people who are experiencing it become kind of the co-creators through their movements, through their dancing. So you're kind of giving away some of the control of the final, the final artwork to your audience, to the people. Was it an easy move to make for you, so that you don't know how people would interact with this? And maybe the others could think about this too, because all of you have worked with interactive artworks.
Well, for me, I mean, in some ways, of course, it kind of maybe a little bit took me as a surprise in the design work that the co-work, especially the coder that I was working with, he was having more trouble with kind of giving up the artist control than me, because I guess it's more about, because I've been working with sort of this kind of improvisatory scores of like a choreographic scores for so many years. So I'm really I'm intrigued by the performance situation where I, as a choreographer, mostly give sort of like a suggestion for the performers, and then they come up with something that I could never come up with. So for me, the whole concept of kind of creating this kind of like an open-ended work was really important to me, that I really wanted to give that sort of agency to the participant, and that was kind of like from the starting point what I wanted to create. So in that sense, it was not a difficult for me, but what was difficult was to kind of, because you have to still choreograph and design the black box that is the world, and there you have to make a lot of decisions, which is good, and then kind of testing that out and trying to somehow find some sort of some sort of a space between that it's too difficult or too open or too kind of too difficult to understand, or simplify it too much. So this was kind of like really balancing it out, and to trying to find something that gives you a little bit of sort of guides you somewhere towards the different properties that you may find, but then not to be too suggestive or too sort of I don't know, demanding or too clear. It's that I think that was hard.
Kerem, Mehmet, maybe you can share your experiences, because you are all also creating artworks that are kind of, you know, an instrument that can be used remotely even, or from people who are there at the venue. So you don't know what the people will be doing with your creation. How do you make sure that it comes out in a way that you can still feel good about, or that people know how to use it, the interactive artwork?
Mehmet? I can jump in if he's having connection issues, but so that's a really good question, actually. We were hoping that people would understand it right away, especially in the event. However, the first few hours had to be just us playing with it like a normal participant, kind of just like showing, aha, like this is how you do everything. But we had to then do like shifts, because it is hard. Like some people tried to touch the sensor, some people try to wave the sensor around, you know, especially like explaining the whole idea behind it, why we have done this, what are they seeing right now. I think it has an adoption process, definitely, for the audience. So we need some more time for people. Some people didn't even know what IoT was, which is understandable, but you know.
For me, this question is really the central question. And for me, it's the most difficult to realize, actually. I love thinking that I create a nonlinear piece, but I'm so trained and socialized in linear thinking and linear arts, especially as a composer. I mean, we are so trained on hearing and creating music in context. So what does that sound mean when this other sound came before or afterwards and so on? I love the idea of creating non-linearly, but I always realize that I am the biggest problem in this process.
Well, but just, you know, realization is the first step to solve the problem. Now, you're all working with technologies and you're not engineers. Well, you remember you got technical background, but not at first. So maybe you can share some experiences of how difficult it was for you to get into the tech part of it. Mehmet, maybe you can start.
Yeah, you know, I started music when I was 13 years old as a trumpet player. So in that time, actually, I want to be a jazz trumpet player and something like that, you know. That was my dream in that time. So after graduating from conducting and composition department at the university, conservatory, I worked with many orchestras as an orchestra arranger and, you know, assistant conductor for many years. And at the same time, actually, I was playing trumpet with a jazz bands, soul music bands, funk bands on stage. While I was working as an arranger in a traditional orchestra, I realized something really, really important for me, because, you know, people and acoustic instruments had their limits, you know, and actually that was not just for me about the limits. And I want to be a really unique composer like my masters, Mozart or Beethoven, you know, but I didn't want to, sorry, yeah, I'm camera, yeah, but I didn't want to imitating themselves, you know, in that time. So after that, actually, I decided to start learn computers and programming and software programming. And my hobbies was in that time theoretical physics and computer at the same time, you know. And I was working every day about physics, about computers. So then I started to develop my software, generative algorithms, and various audiovisual instruments, you know, because one might say, I have to say that traditional composer working with instruments, you know, and they are using instruments for composing music. But like me, electronic composers is composing the sound themselves, you know, and that was the miracle thing for me, you know. I decided to go there. So after that, I decided to develop my softwares, my instruments, my algorithms, and I use that in my music. But I think the most important thing, not using the technologies, actually. You know, this is because not using hyped technologies like AI or like IoT, you know. My way is I was seeking my unique sound and creativity, you know, and creativity and, you know, my sound actually. And I realized that, you know, that kind of technologies is just instruments, you know, and those are not an art, you know, they are just instruments, they are just tools, you know. And yeah, that was really difficult for me learning softwares because I was coming really strong musical background. I was not engineer, but you know, it's people can learn, you know. I learned.
That's always good.
Yeah.
So you learned it yourself, but I guess some of you also you know, teamed up with technicians, with programmers, with I don't know, 3D artists. But I wanted to jump on something that you just said, Mehmet, because you said that you know, many of those technologies are kind of hyped. So there's a lot of you know, talk about what miraculous things AI can do, and then if you look closer, it might not be that great. So Mathis, as you worked a lot with AI, how was your hands-on experience? Was it the big thing that you hoped for, or was it not so intelligent after all?
Well, after all, so-called AI is not that intelligent as you might hoped for before you started working with it. And still at the same time, I mean, you read in the news almost every second day about this amazing breakthrough, and we use it all the time. It's really powerful. But then, yeah, I'm personally, I'm going back and forth in, am I really wanting to learn all this with that kind of weak result? I mean, if you, it's a big effort to get something usable actually, and then you still have the problem that it's a kind of a very sophisticated random machine, like a stochastic machine. And then you have these moments where you receive this moment of wonderment, where you realize, wow, this is something nobody else could have come up. And this, so not sure where this leads to, but it's really one has to make a very clear differentiation between the hype and the actual work with it. That's a different thing. And it's always a problem to work against the hype expectation. I don't know, how is it for you, Mehmet? I mean, this is
Yeah. I agree that.
Or I don't, if I can jump in.
Yes.
I think it's, I totally agree with both of you. I think it's, for me at least, it was really more about kind of finding what is important and what is that, like what are my aesthetics as an artist, and what I'm looking for, what interests me, and then kind of getting acquainted with the tools, acquainted enough with the tools to understand what do they provide, and then to make that decision is like do you take the trouble of actually learning how to use it and going, because it takes a lot of time, like you said, Mathis, and Mehmet also. I admire you guys if you've learned to use them, like properly use them. For me, it's been the decision that I kind of myself learn the basics, so I understand how you work with the tool. But then, then I work with somebody who's actually really equipped with the tool, so that that there is a sort of like a smarter brain that it's working with me. But then I need to understand the tool sort of good enough so that we can actually discuss about what are we working on, and to come up with something that it's somehow acceptable result. But it does take a long time, and it can be really tiring, or but also kind of like sometimes there is, like you said, Mathis, that there's some nice surprises and some things that it comes up with, and then you are like really fascinated with it. But then in many times the fascination wears off quite quickly, and then that's also the kind of like, oh, okay, so now it's able to produce this, but then what's then after?
Yeah, you immediately want the next thing, right?
yeah, and then you have to do a lot of work, like many, sometimes days or even weeks of coding to have the next step,
which might be tiny,
very, very tiny.
Yeah.
Okay, now before it comes too frustrating,
but it's the same with learning an instrument. I mean, how many hours did we practice our instruments and our movements? I mean, this is there's this promise made by technology companies that technology is simple, but if you actually take it seriously, if you take it serious as an instrument, why should it? Right?
Okay, so one takeaway is that you have to practice a lot, just like every artist has to do before he or she becomes an artist. So, but I want to know, is it worth it if you look at the art world? How is your art received in the art community, which has, of course, some progressive parts, but not all of them are. So what's the feedback from the art community to what you're doing? Do they think, okay, that's a nice game, playful thing, or do you get the the standing that you deserve for being a pioneer in trying to do something with new technologies?
I would like to start. I have a lot of friends which really work in the very analog realm and don't have any connection, and they look at me like with great pity. Because they say basically it will take another 10 or 20 years until the results become as strong or artistically worth or whatever, like we are used to them from the established and proven and experienced art forms, which might be true, but actually often I have a similar feeling, but that's where I get my kick.
What about the other guys?
So from our experience, it all starts again with audience interest, which leads to brands they want to get involved with that audience, etc. Thankfully, maybe I've realized that there are quite a lot of digital artists and digital art coming out of Istanbul and from Turkey. And that is kind of because we actually have an audience that is interested in these. Like maybe names like Refik Anadol, who does digital art. He just opened a gallery in Istanbul, and it was just like a queue in front for weeks and weeks. So after people see those, brands get involved, and we don't really need brands to create our own art. However, when you're talking about technology, you need the best projectors, you need the best sensors. These technologies cost a substantial amount of need funding, and for it to be out in public, you need that feedback. As I remember, for example, we didn't really, we spent most of the budget we got from IBM just to like make this happen, but it always leads to other things. But what we see that like the audience is hungry for, and they're aware that many things are happening, and they're interested in being ahead and finding out what is out there. And if you can communicate it well, if it looks good, it's always, the aesthetics need to be shiny, and it kind of needs to appeal. Sometimes you might have the best technology, but if it doesn't really convey a good aesthetic, it doesn't translate well. And we've experienced both ends of that. So yeah, that's where we stand right now.
Yeah. And for me, actually, using technology and actually aesthetics and creativity is most important thing, for me, and rather than using technologies. So people always telling to me for my sound and my music, because I'm an electroacoustic composer, so they are telling me this is not music, They're always telling to me this is not music. And I'm telling to them, okay, this is organized sound for you. Okay, yeah, this is, I can tell like this, And actually, I know that these newfound possibilities are the results of passing from the analog world to the digital world, and which is this world is numbers world, and numbers could easily manipulating with by using computers. So I'm using this streaming data in my music, and I'm giving to them some meaning, because I know this my sound is not like violin sounds or like a piano sounds, and my music has not the melodies, even melodies and beats, or, and when the people is listening my sound, they're always thinking like this, this is not music, okay, and why you are doing this, they are telling me why there's no emotion. They are thinking like this, there is no emotion, they're always seeking emotions. So actually I'm using traditional instruments together with my new sounds. When I'm doing this, people understanding, and people understanding the emotion. When I'm getting together traditional art and new art together, and people understanding my sound. So yeah, this is my way. I think I'm always doing this together, putting some melodies together with a really interesting sound, or I'm writing some duets with stone sound with fagot or trumpet together. They are playing together,
So you build a bridge from the old to the new world. Great. Hannah, there's one question from the audience for you that I forgot to pass over to you. If there's any publication that you can recommend, especially regarding the sense of power when expanding in space. So maybe if you got one, you can put it, if you know it right away, just tell us. If not, you can just send it afterwards.
Well, I think there's a book about game sound, which now I don't remember the author's name because I'm on summer holiday, but I don't think I can find it really quickly. But she talks a lot about like how sound extends to the virtual space and how you connect to the characters through sound, and how sound is an extension, really becomes an extension of the character. and also how you sort of that you start experiencing the character from the first person rather than the third person. This is in gaming, but this was also something that influenced my thinking, and it was like when we were creating the skeleton conductor, but it was also something that we really personally experienced when working in the live context with sensors.
Great,
yeah.
thank you.
But I want to say about this funding thing. I like in Finland. I would say that the art world or the art funding is not really recognizing the digital arts it's not very sort of profoundly funded, and it's really hard. It's also difficult because it's really interdisciplinary, and in Finland the arts world and the kind of arts funding also is very still very boxed in specific disciplines. But what I find really, really nice and really interesting in working with this kind of digital tools is that the community of artists is really, they are really open. And like you are doing, Mehmet, that you are kind of, you have all these digital instruments that you've created and you share it for free, like the theremin in your website and things like that, that there's all these kind of people are really, because I feel that everybody who's working in this field are some sort of pioneers, and they have their own aesthetics that they're working with, but still the tools, the technical tools might be very similar with different people. So people are sharing the tools and kind of guiding them and the algorithms and, you know, pieces of code and all that. And I think that has been wonderful to encounter, that everybody is really kind of that there's a global community of artists and people are really willing to share.
I tend to think that the vibe of the digital arts scene is more like the vibe of the independent theater scene from the 70s or 80s, whereas the independent theater scene became quite institutionalized. So
yeah, everybody kind of feels that they are a bit somehow underground. Doing stuff, although it might look very high-end and glossy from the surface, but then it's really kind of everybody has to do the groundwork on their own.
The real heroes are usually the YouTube broadcasters, just like sharing the most ridiculous things and how they work, and that's where we all kind of found our clues on how we're gonna pull this off. Those are the real heroes.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Now we are over time a bit, but we take some more minutes. Now, if you guys want to ask questions to each other, now would be the chance. If not, I have a final question for all of you.
I have a question to Hannah. So the VR piece, is that actually published? Could I use it with my VR goggles, or is that just location only?
It's not anywhere online to be downloaded, but if you want, I can send you the build.
Please, I would love to try it out.
Yeah.
Likewise.
But it has to. You have to have a computer-based.
Yeah. I have a machine with the Oculus Rift.
Yeah. Okay. Oculus Rift it doesn't work on. I'm sorry.
Scheiße.
But Silke has,
doesn't work on Oculus.
Silke
it
has
needs
all
more
the
power for.
Okay, so then I go to Silke.
Yes, she got it.
We can solve that problem.
Perfect.
Great.
Perfect.
So, other questions from you to each other? If not, I got the final one because I wanted to. Okay. I wanted to pick up what Hannah just said, that all of you are kind of pioneers, combining different technologies that are and using them in a way that maybe wasn't thought of from the people who invented those technologies, because they were probably invented for some other use cases. So if you look in the future and there's even more convergence of certain technologies, be creative. What other experiences could be possible by mixing IoT devices, AI, XR, completely new sound experiences? What kind of things do you have in mind that could be made in the future?
Well, I was really inspired by the Mehmet's and Kerem's sort of this community instrument that people can kind of play online. And then because I have been really dreaming of turning the skeleton conductor into something where different people in different parts of the world could be in their own sonic bubble and play it physically, so that it would not be on your desktop or computer, but you would be able to physically play the real-time virtual instrument. That's kind of one of my dreams, that I would hope to have this like a dancing orchestra that plays together.
I think thank you. So I think we're not too far away from an actual digital Beatles being formed. Just random people from around the world. Maybe they will be just from all over the place. Maybe they will not even meet together, but we will be attending their concerts, and the technology allows us, especially when 5G will be everywhere. I think we're kind of not, the artists haven't really explored what's possible with that yet. And when they do, I think there will be many new instruments and new experiences we're gonna see, like especially in the music scene. But I think this can also expand to theater, dance, ballet, like motion sensors, motion capture sensors. You can basically, maybe you know, Hannah, like you can transform any dancer into any character right now, and that can be virtual.
Like what Gilles Jobin is doing with his virtual crossing project in Switzerland, and it's really nice. But what I'm kind of like, if you've solved the latency problem with sound, with real time sound, then I'm like, oh yes, that's my dream. I would love to have this.
We're not there yet.
Sonic dancers in different parts of the world and playing and dancing together.
Great. So
yeah,
you got
sorry.
this vision. Maybe you might, Mathis and Mehmet, you got some more ideas.
Well, I would just expand on this term of sonic bubbles. I mean, we are really, sometimes I like to think of that we are living in a time where this idea of the romanticist like Richard Wagner becomes real, that time is turning into space. So when I think about future music, like this will be a musical space, and not which you enter and you experience it by exploring, and you actually change it by acting inside this musical space. That's something I envision.
Sounds great. Mehmet, maybe you should want to share something.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. You know, I agree, Kerem. You know, and we're waiting about 5G, and I know it will change the world. But I think analog world, you know, was using electron flows. You know, and I think digital world is using now a stream of data for producing sound. And I think, but we are talking about computers, you know, and binary systems. And I think it will be changed in the future because the quantum computers is coming now. So I know, and quantum internet coming now, you know, and maybe do you know about the quantum duality? And we will use that in really future, you know, maybe 10 years. And I think it will be change our worlds, you know, and music, and sound, and connections. Yeah, future will be there, I think.
Great. Yeah, Europe's and Germany's first quantum computer just went online 3 weeks ago. So maybe you can connect with your friends from IBM because it's theirs. And
yeah. Actually, we are planning that. Yeah, we are working about that.
Great. And make music with it. Great. So we end with quantum computers. I think that's the most futuristic ending that we could have found. Thank you so much. So thank you so much for this great and inspirational talks and deep dives into your work. Hannah, Mathis, Mehmet, and Kerem. And for the discussion afterwards. I think that was great. And I had a lot of fun. And thank you for the audience for joining us. And Silke and her team for setting this up. And I'm sure we'll see a lot of great digital, interactive, quantum, I don't know, universal sound experiences from you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much from my side. And I don't know if Silke wants to close the evening, but I'll hand over to her anyway. So thank you from my side.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you as well. I thought it was really a great discussion, very inspiring. And I hope that you will combine your activities and especially I also love the idea of playing music together or doing dance performances together from all over the world. So let's follow up on this and see what we can do in the future. Great. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Really nice to meet all of you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Cheers. Let's keep in touch.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.